IBM Q Radar version 7.3.2. Arial Query Language Guide. IBM note: before you use this information and the product that it supports, read the information in Notices on page 73. Product information: this document applies to IBM registered Q Radar registered Security Intelligence Platform v7.3.2 and subsequent releases unless superseded by an updated version of this document. Copyright International Business Machines Corporation 2013-2019. U.S. Government users restricted rights. Use, duplication or disclosure restricted by GSA ADP schedule contract with IBM Corp. Contents. About this guide. V. Chapter 1. What's new for users in AQL? 1. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language. 5. Arial Query Language deprecated versions. 5. AQL fields changed in AQL v3. 5. Introduction to AQL with sample queries. 7. Arial Query Language in the Q Radar user interface. 8. Overview of Arial Query Language. 9. Best practices for using quotation marks in AQL queries. 11. Select statement. 13. Where clause. 14. Group by clause. 15. Having clause. 16. Order by clause. 17. Like clause. 18. Count function. 18. AQL logical and comparison operators. 19. AQL data calculation and formatting functions. 22. AQL data aggregation functions. 27. AQL data retrieval functions. 30. Time criteria in AQL queries. 44. AQL date and time formats. 47. AQL subquery. 49. Grouping related events into sessions. 50. Transactional query refinements. 52. Conditional logic in AQL queries. 57. Bitwise operators in AQL queries. 58. CIDR IP addresses in AQL queries. 61. Custom properties in AQL queries. 61. System performance query examples. 62. Events and flows query examples. 63. Reference data query examples. 64. User and network monitoring query examples. 66. Event, flow, and CMOC fields for AQL queries. 67. Notices. 73. Trademarks. 74. Terms and conditions for product documentation. 74. IBM Online Privacy Statement. 75. General Data Protection Regulation. 75. Index. 77. Roman 3. Roman 4. About this guide, the Arial Query Language AQL guide provides you with information for using the AQL Advanced Searching and API. Intended audience: system administrators who view event or flow data that is stored in the Arial database. Technical documentation to find IBM Q Radar product documentation on the web, including all translated documentation. Access the IBM Knowledge Center, http www.ibm.com/support/knowledgecenter/ss42vs/welcome. For information about how to access more technical documentation in the Q Radar products library, see Q Radar support. Assistance 101, https://ibm.biz/QRadar support. Contacting customer support. For information about contacting customer support, see Q Radar support. Assistance 101, https://ibm.biz/QRadar support. Statement of good security practices. IT system security involves protecting systems and information through prevention, detection and response to improper access from within and outside your enterprise. Improper access can result in information being altered, destroyed, misappropriated or misused, or can result in damage to or misuse of your systems. including for use in attacks on others. No IT system or product should be considered completely secure, and no single product, service, or security measure can be completely effective in preventing improper use or access. IBM systems, products, and services are designed to be part of a lawful, comprehensive security approach, which will necessarily involve additional operational procedures and may require other systems, products, or services to be most effective. IBM does not warrant that any systems, products, or services are immune from, or will make your enterprise immune from, the malicious or illegal conduct of any party. Please note, use of this program may implicate various laws or regulations, including those related to privacy, data protection, employment, and electronic communications and storage. IBM Q Radar may be used only for lawful purposes and in a lawful manner. Customer agrees to use this program pursuant to and assumes all responsibility for complying with applicable laws, regulations, and policies. Licensee represents that it will obtain or has obtained any consents, permissions, or licenses required to enable its lawful use of IBM Q Radar. Copyright IBM Corp. 2013, 2019 v. Roman 6 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide Chapter 1. What's new for users in AQL? IBM Q Radar v7.3.1 introduces new Arial Query Language, AQL, functions, and enhancements. Parameters. Remote servers now includes the option to select servers in your search by specifying the ID or name of event processors by using the Arial servers for app name function with parameters. Remote servers. You can specify an event processor by name in an AQL query. For example, parameters remote servers equals Arial servers for app name event processor 0. Event processor 104 by using the Arial servers for EPID function with parameters remote servers. You can specify an event processor by ID in an AQL query. For example, parameters remote servers equals Arial servers for EPID 102 by specifying an event processor or servers that are connected to that event processor. You can run AQL queries faster and more efficiently. When you have multiple servers in your organization and you know where the data that you're looking for is saved, you can fine-tune the search to just the servers, clusters, or specific servers on event processors. In the following example, you search only the servers that are connected to event processor 104. Select processorid, processor name, processorid, log source name, log sourceid, from events group by log sourceid, parameters remote servers equals Arial servers for app name, event processor 104. You can significantly reduce the load on your servers, run the query regularly, and get your results faster when you filter your query to search fewer servers. Learn more about parameters remote servers. Parameters excludes servers from your AQL search. Avoid having to search all AQL servers by using parameters exclude servers to exclude specific servers. IP address. For example, parameters exclude servers equals 177.2.1.32.1.2.3.1.32.31.32,006 event processor name. For example, parameters exclude servers equals Arial servers for app name, event processor name, event processor ID. For example, parameters exclude servers equals Arial servers for EPID processor ID. Searching only the servers that have the data that you require speeds up searches and uses less server resources. refine your query to exclude the servers that don't have the data that you're searching for. In the following example, you exclude servers that are connected to event processor ABC. Select processorid, processor name, processorid, log source name, log sourceid, from events group by log sourceid, parameters exclude servers equals aerial servers for app name, event processor ABC. If you refine multiple queries by using parameters exclude servers, you can reduce the load on your servers and get your results faster. Copyright IBM Corp. 2013, 2019. 1. Learn more about parameters exclude servers. Specify the event processor name in an ACL query by using the aerial servers for app name function with parameters remote servers or parameters exclude servers in an ACL query. You can include or exclude the servers that are connected to an event processor by using the aerial servers for app name function to name an event processor in the query. For example, use the aerial servers for app name function with parameters remote servers to include event processor ABC in the query. Parameters remote servers equals aerial servers for app name event processor ABC. For example, you might want the search to exclude all servers on a named event processor by using the aerial servers for app name function with parameters exclude servers. In the following example, event processor XYZ is excluded in the query. Parameters exclude servers equals aerial servers for app name event processor size. Learn more about the aerial servers for app name function. Specify the event processor ID in an ACL query by using the aerial servers for EPID function with parameters remote servers or parameters exclude servers in an ACL query. You can include or exclude servers connected to an event processor by using the aerial servers for EPID function to specify the ID of an event processor in the query. For example, include servers on the event processor that has the ID 101, parameters remote servers equals aerial servers for EPID 101. For example, exclude servers on the event processor that has the ID 102, parameters exclude servers equals aerial servers for EPID 102. Learn more about the aerial servers for EPID function. Filter your search by using the aerial servers for EPID function with the parameters remote servers or parameters exclude servers to specify event processors by ID and their aerial servers. You can use the aerial servers for EPID function with parameters remote servers and parameters exclude servers to specify aerial servers that you want to include or exclude from your search. You can also use the following query to list aerial servers by event processor ID. Select processorid, aerial servers for app name, processorid, from events returns aerial servers that are associated with an event processor that is identified by ID. Here's an example of the output for the query, which shows the ID of the processor and the servers for that processor. 22 localhost 32,11,172.16.158.95 32,006. Learn more about the aerial servers for EPID function. In an AQL query, you can specify aerial servers that are connected to a named event processor by using the aerial servers for app name function. Use the aerial servers for app name function with parameters remote servers or parameters exclude servers to specify aerial servers that you want to include or exclude from your search. You can also use the following query to list aerial servers by event processor name. 2. IBM Q Radar. Q Radar aerial query language guide. Select processor name, processorid, aerial servers for app name, processor name, processorid, from events. Here's an example of the output for the query, which shows the name of the processor and the servers. Event processor ABC localhost 32,11,117.168.95:32,006. Learn more about the aerial servers for appname function. Use the componented function to retrieve the ID for any named QRadar component and return data for that component. For example, you can retrieve events for a named event processor. In the following example, you retrieve events from event processor 0. Select asterisk from events where processorid equals componented event processor 0. ParseTimestamp function passes the text representation of date and time and converts it to Unix epoch time. Do time-based calculations easily in AQL when you convert time in text format to epoch time. Include time-based calculations in your AQL queries and use the time-based criteria that you specify to return events. That helps to enhance the security of your organization by making it easier to monitor user activity. For example, you might want to find out that the difference between user logout and relogin times is less than 30 minutes. If this timing seems suspicious, you can investigate further. Learn more about the parseTimestamp function. Retrieve information about the location and distance of IP addresses. Use geographical data that is provided by MaxMind to find information about the location and distance between IP addresses in QRadar. The geo::lookup AQL function returns location data for a selected IP address. The geo::distance AQL function returns the distance in kilometers of two IP addresses. Easily recognize the geographical origin of your data by organizing your data by location, such as city or country, instead of by IP address, and use the distance between IP addresses to evaluate the relative distance between your QRadar locations. Learn more about using the geo::lookup and the geo::distance functions. Enhanced support for the AQL subquery in QRadar v.728 and v.730. The subquery was accessible only by using API. The subquery is now available for use in searches from the Log Activity or Network Activity tabs. Learn more about the AQL subquery. Enhanced support for the session by clause in QRadar v.730. The session by clause was accessible only by using API. The session by clause is now available for use in searches in QRadar. Learn more about the AQL session by clause. Chapter 1. What's new for users in AQL 3 for IBM QRadar? QRadar Aerial Query Language Guide. Chapter 2. Aerial Query Language. The Aerial Query Language, AQL, is a structured query language that you use to communicate with the aerial databases. Use AQL to query and manipulate event and flow data from the aerial database. Aerial Query Language deprecated versions. Aerial Query Language, AQL, v1 and v2 are deprecated. The command line script /opt/curator/bin/aerial client is deprecated. The following warning message is displayed both before and after the results are returned. Warning: AQL v1 and v2 will be deprecated in the future. For information about using AQL v3, see the product documentation. During your migration to AQL v3, you can suppress the warning message by typing /opt/curator/bin/aerial client prep v warning. The Python client and the advanced search option use AQL v3. AQL fields changed in AQL v3 Aerial Query Language. AQL v2 is deprecated in QRadar v7.2.4 and later. Some aerial database fields were changed or removed in AQL v3. If you have queries that use these fields, you must replace them. Table 1 shows the new aerial database fields. Table 1. Fields that were replaced in AQL v3. Field name AQL v2. Replacement function name AQL v3. This following aerial database fields were removed. KID number, token, destination, host, destination, IP, search, destination, port, NA, source, host, source, IP, search, source, port, NA. Copyright IBM Corp. 2013. 2019 5 Destination DSCP only any destination flag small destination payload hex destination precedence only last packet date local host remote host source DSCP only any source flag source payload hex small source payload hex source precedence only source host string destination network application source network small payload hex quick search matches bits per second src bits per second dst bits per second bytes per second bytes per packet src bytes per packet dst bytes per packet destination byte ratio destination packet ratio packets per second source byte ratio source packet ratio total bytes total packets retention bucket proper last packet time proper last packet date. 6. IBM QRadar. QRadar Aerial Query Language Guide Introduction to AQL with sample queries. You use Aerial Query Language AQL to get information about events and flows from IBM QRadar that you can't get from tables or graphs on the QRadar tabs. Use AQL queries in the Advanced Search box on the Log Activity or Network Activity tabs, or in some apps in QRadar to graph dashboard items. Use the following syntax order when you use AQL. SQL structure, select asterisk, column name, from table name, where search clauses, group by column reference asterisk, having clause, order by column reference asterisk, limit numeric value, time frame. Note: when you use a group by or order by clause to sort information, you can reference column names from your existing select statement only. Note: by default, if the time frame value is not specified, the query runs against the last 5 minutes of aerial data. Remember to use single quotation marks to specify literal values or variables and use double quotation marks for column names that contain spaces or non-ASCII characters. Single quotation marks. Use single quotation marks when you reference the beginning and end of a string, as shown in these examples. Username like %user %source CIDR equals 192.0.2.0. Text search equals VPN authenticated user KID name KID as event name double quotation marks. Use double quotation marks when column names contain spaces or non-ASCII characters, as shown in these examples. Custom property names with spaces, such as account security ID. Values that have non-ASCII characters. Simple AQL queries. Table 2. Simple AQL queries. Basic AQL commands, comments, returns all the fields from the events table that select asterisk from events last 10 minutes were sent in the last 10 minutes. Returns the source IP and destination IP from select source IP destination IP from events last 24 hours. The events table that were sent in the last 24 hours. Returns all the fields from the events table during select asterisk from events start 2017 01/01/9/000 that time interval. Stop 2017 0101 10 20 00. Returns all the fields in the events table during the select asterisk from events limit 5 last 24 hours with output limited to 5 results. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 7 Table 2. Simple AQL queries. Continued basic AQL commands. Comments. Returns all the fields in the events table sent in the select asterisk from events order by magnitude desk last 24 hours sorting the output from highest to lowest magnitude. Returns all the fields in the events table that have a select asterisk from events where magnitude greater or equal 3 last 24 hours magnitude that is less than 3 from the last 24 hours. Returns all the fields in the events table that have select asterisk from events where sourceip equals 192.0.2.0, the specified source IP, and destination IP within and destination IP equals 198.51.100.0. Start the specified time period. 2017 01019000. Stop. 2017 0101 10 20 00. Returns all the fields in the events table where the select asterisk from events where insider 192.0.2.0/24 source IP address is within the specified SIDR IP sourceip range. Returns all the fields in the events table where the select asterisk from events where username like %Raul %username contains the example string. The percentage symbols indicate that the username can match a string of 0 or more characters. Returns all the fields in the events table where the select asterisk from events where username I like %Raul %username contains the example string, and the results are case insensitive. The percentage symbols indicate that the username can match a string of 0 or more characters. Returns the sourceip category and select sourceip category credibility from events credibility fields from the events table with where severity 3 and category equals 5018 or specific severity levels, a specific category, and a severity 3 and credibility 8 specific credibility level. The AND clause allows for multiple strings of types of results that you want to have. Returns all the fields from the events table that select asterisk from events where text search firewall have the specified text in the output. Returns all the fields in the events table where the select asterisk from events where username is not null username value is not null. Arial query language in the QRadar user interface using AQL can help enhance advanced searches and provide specific results. When you use AQL queries, you can display data from all across QRadar in the log activity or network activity tabs. To use AQL in the search fields, consider the following functions. In the search fields on the log activity or network activity tabs, type Ctrl+space to see the full list of AQL functions, fields, and keywords. Ctrl+Enter helps you create multi-line AQL queries in the user interface, which makes the queries more readable. 8. IBM QRadar. QRadar Arial Query Language Guide by using the copy, Ctrl+C, and paste, Ctrl+V, keyboard commands, you can copy directly to and from the advanced search field. Note: ensure that you use appropriate quotation marks when you copy queries to the search field. The AQL categories are listed with the entered component in the user interface. The following table lists and explains the different categories. Table 3. Arial query language categories. Category definition database. The name of an Arial database or table that you can query. The database is either events or flows. Keyword typically core SQL clauses. For example, select or null, not, as, ACS, ascending, and more. Field indicates basic information that you can query from the database. Examples include access intent, VPC ID, and domain ID. Function various functions from string functions to call in more information. Functions work on all fields and databases. Examples of functions include date format, hostname, and lower. Figure 1. AQL in the advanced search field. Overview of Arial query language. Use AQL to extract, filter, and perform actions on event and flow data that you extract from the Arial database in IBM QRadar. You can use AQL to get data that might not be easily accessible from the user interface. The following diagram shows the flow of an AQL query. Chapter 2. Arial query language 9. Select column name, column name, column name, column name, column name from events, column name, asterisk options or asterisk from flows, column name as alias, column name function, property as alias, column name. Where condition. Group by column data from results. Optional having condition. Order by column name. Query results. Figure 2. AQL query flow. 10. IBM QRadar. QRadar Arial query language guide. Structure of an AQL statement. Use the select statement to select fields from events or flows in the Arial database, which are displayed as columns. For example, the following query returns the results that are shown in the following table. Select source IP, destination IP, username, protocol ID, event count from events. Table 4. AQL query results source IP, destination IP, username, protocol ID, event count 192.0.2.21 198.5 1.10.0.21 Joe Arial 233 192.0.2.22 198.5 1.10.0.24 Jim Arial 233 1. AQL queries begin with a select statement to select event or flow data from the Arial database. You can refine the data output of the select statement by using the where, group by, having, order by, limit, and last clauses. Select use the select statement to select fields from events or flows. For example, select all fields from events or flows by typing select asterisk from events or select asterisk from flows. Use the following clauses to filter and manipulate the data that is returned by the select statement. Where use the where clause to insert a condition that filters the output. For example, where log source id equals 65. Group by use the group by clause to group the results by one or more columns that you specify in the query. For example, group by log source id. Having use the having clause to specify a condition after the group by clause. For example, having mag 3. Order by use the order by clause to order the results for a column in the AQL query in an ascending or descending order. For example, order by username desk. Limit use a limit clause to limit the number of results that are returned to a specific number. For example, limit 50 to limit the output to 50 results. Last use a last clause to specify a time frame for the query. For example, last 1 hours. The following example incorporates all of the clauses that are described in the list. Select source IP, destination IP, username from events where username equals test name, group by source IP, destination IP, order by source IP, desk limit 10 last 2 days. Best practices for using quotation marks in AQL queries. In an AQL query, query terms and queried columns sometimes require single or double quotation marks so that QRadar can pass the query. The following table defines when to use single or double quotation marks. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 11 Table 5. Type of quotation marks to use in a query. Type of quotation when to use marks single to specify any American National Standards Institute ANSI varchar string to SQL, such as parameters for a like or equals operator or any operator that expects a varchar string. Examples. Select asterisk from events where source IP equals 192.0.2.0. Select asterisk from events where user name like %James%. Select asterisk from events where user name equals James. Select asterisk from events where insider 10.45.225.14 source IP. Select asterisk from events where text search my search term. Double use double quotation marks for the following query items to specify table and column names that contain spaces or non-ASCII characters, and to specify custom property names that contain spaces or non-ASCII characters. Examples. Select username column as username from events. Select my custom property name as my new alias from events. Use double quotation marks to define the name of a system object, such as field, function, database, or an existing alias. Example. Select application category, source IP, event count as count of events from events group by count of events. Use double quotation marks to specify an existing alias that has a space when you use a where, group by, or order by clause. Examples. Select source IP, destination IP, source port, event count as event count, category, has identity, username, payload, at F8, payload, KID, KIDNME, KID, from events where not source port less or equal 3003 or has identity equals true, and KID equals 5,023 or KID equals 5,193 and insider 192.0.2.0/4 source IP or not insider 192.0.2.0/4 source IP order by event count desk last 60 minutes. Select source IP, destination IP, source port, event count as event count, category, has identity, username, payload, at F8, payload, KID, KIDNME, KID, from events order by event count desk last 60 minutes. 12 IBM QRadar. QRadar Arial Query Language Guide Table 5. Type of quotation marks to use in a query. Continued. Type of quotation when to use marks single or double use single quotation marks to specify an alias for a column definition in a query. Example. Select username as name of user, source IP as IP source from events. Use double quotation marks to specify an existing alias with a space when you use a where, group by, or order by clause. Example. Select source IP as source IP address, event count as event count, KID, KIDNME, KID, from events group by source IP address last 60 minutes. copying query examples from the AQL guide. If you copy and paste a query example that contains single or double quotation marks from the AQL guide, you must retype the quotation marks to be sure that the query passes. Select statement. Use the select statement to define the criteria that you use to retrieve event or flow data. Use the select statement to define the columns, fields that you want to output from your query. You can use the select statement to output data from an AQL function by using a column alias. Typically, you refer to events or flows in your select statement, but you can also use the select statement with the global view database or any other database that you might have access to. Use the select statement to select the columns that you want to display in the query output. A select statement can include the following elements: fields from the events or flows databases, custom properties from the events or flows databases, functions that you use with fields to represent specific data that you want to return. For example, the function assetHostName sourceIP searches for the host name of an asset by source IP address at a specific time. Use an asterisk to denote all columns. Field names and select and from statements are not case sensitive. For example, the following query uses different cases and it passes. Select sourceIP, date format, t time, EIMMDDHH:MM, as start time from events where username is no t null group by sourceIP odd er by start time l as t3 who rs. The following examples are queries that use select statements. Select asterisk from flows returns all columns from the flows database. Select sourceIP, destinationIP from events returns only the sourceIP and destinationIP columns from the events database. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 13. Select sourceIP asterisk from flows returns the sourceIP column first, which is followed by all columns from the flows database. Select sourceIP as my source IPs from events returns the sourceIP column as the alias or renamed column my source IPs. Select assetHostName sourceIP as host name sourceIP from events returns the output of the function assetHostName as the column name host name and the sourceIP column from the events database. Where clause filter your AQL queries by using where clauses. The where clause describes the filter criteria that you apply to the query and filters the resulting view to accept only those events or flows that meet the specified condition. You can apply the where clause to add a condition to search criteria in AQL queries, which filters the search results. A search condition is a combination of logical and comparison operators that together make a test. Only those input rows that pass the test are included in the result. You can apply the following filters when you use where clause in a query. Equal sign equals not equal to symbol less than symbol greater than symbol less that or equal to symbol less or equal greater than or equal to symbol greater or equal between two values. For example, 64 and 512 like case sensitive match I like case insensitive match is null is empty and slash or combine conditions or either condition text search text string match. Examples of where clauses. The following query example shows events that have a severity level of greater than 9 and are from a specific category. Select source IP category credibility from events where severity 9 and category equals 5013. Change the order of evaluation by using parentheses. The search conditions that are enclosed in parentheses are evaluated first. Select source IP category credibility from events where severity 9 and category equals 5013, or severity 5 and credibility 8. 14. IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide. Return events from the events database where the text typot is found. Select kid name, kid, as event name, asterisk from events where text search typot. The following query outputs events from the events database where health is included in the log source name. Select log sourced, log source group name, log sourced, log source name, log sourced from events where log source name, log sourced, I like, %, health, %. The following query outputs events where the device type ID is equal to 11, Linux server DSM, and where the QID is equal to 44,250,002, which is the identifier for cron status. Select asterisk from events where device type equals 11 and kid equals 44,250,002. Group by clause. Use the group by clause to aggregate your data by one or more columns. To provide meaningful results of the aggregation, usually, data aggregation is combined with aggregate functions on remaining columns. Examples of group by clauses. The following query example shows IP addresses that sent more than 1 million bytes within all flows in a specific time. Select source IP, SUM, source bytes, from flows where source bytes 1 million group by source IP. The results might look similar to the following output. Source IP SUM source bytes 1,629,768.0. However, if you compare this information to a non-aggregated query, the output displays all the IP addresses that are unique, as shown in the following output. Source IP source bytes 192.0.2.0.1,448,629 10.10.105.2.2,412,426 10.10.3.791,793,095 10.10.3.7.141,449,148 10.103.29,1,097,523 10.105.96.148,4,096,834 192.0.2.0.2,833,961 10.105.2.102,490,083 10.103.73.206 1,629,768 10.103.70. Chapter 2. Arial query language 15.10.105.964,228,522. To view the maximum number of events, use the following syntax. Select MAX event count from events. To view the number of average events from a source IP, use the following syntax. Select AV event count, protocol name, protocolid, from events group by source IP. The output displays the following results. Source IP protocol 192.0.2.0 TCP.IP 10.105.2.10 UDP.UDP 10.103.70.243 UDP.UDP 10.103.77.143 UDP.UDP 10.105.32.29 TCP.IP 10.105.96.148 TCP.IP 192.0.2.0 TCP.IP 10.105.2.10 ICMP.IP. Having clause. Use the having clause in a query to apply more filters to specific data by applying filters to the results after the group by clause. The having clause follows the group by clause. You can apply the following filters when you use a having clause in a query. Equal sign equals, not equal to symbol, less than symbol, greater than symbol, less that, or equal to symbol, less or equal, greater than, or equal to symbol, greater or equal, between two values. For example, 64 and 512, like case sensitive match, I like case insensitive match, sum/avg total, or average values, max/min maximum, or minimum values. Examples of having clauses. The following query example shows results for users who triggered VPN events from more than 4 IP addresses, having count of source IPs 4 in the last 24 hours. Select username, uniquely count source IP as count of source IPs from events where log source name, log source id, I like, %VPN, and username is not null. Group by username having count of source IPs for last 24 hours. 16. IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide Note. When you type an AQL query, use single quotation marks for a string comparison, and use double quotation marks for a property value comparison. The following query example shows results for events where the credibility, having credibility 5, is greater than 5. Select username, source IP, credibility from events group by source IP, having credibility 5 last 1 hours. The following query groups results by source IP, but displays only results where the magnitude, having magnitude 5, is greater than 5. Select source IP, magnitude from events group by source IP, having magnitude 5. Order by clause. Use the order by clause to sort the resulting view that is based on expression results. The result is sorted by ascending or descending order. Note: when you type an AQL query, use single quotation marks for a string comparison, and use double quotation marks for a property value comparison. You can use the order by clause on one or more columns. Use the group by and order by clauses in a single query. Sort in ascending or descending order by appending the ASC or desk keyword to the order by clause. Examples of order by clauses to query AQL to return results in descending order. Use the following syntax. Select source bytes, source IP from flows where source bytes 1 million order by source bytes desk. To display results in ascending order, use the following syntax. Select source bytes, source IP from flows where source bytes 1 million order by source bytes ASC. To determine the top abnormal events, or the most bandwidth-intensive IP addresses, you can combine group by and order by clauses in a single query. For example, the following query displays the most traffic-intensive IP address in descending order. Select source IP, sum, source bytes, from flows group by source IP order by sum, source bytes, desk. Note: when you use the group by clause with a column name or AQL function, only the first value is returned for the group by column by default, even though other values might exist. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 17. Like clause. Use the like clause to retrieve partial string matches in the Arial database. You can search fields by using the like clause. The following table shows the wildcard options are supported by the Arial Query Language, AQL. Table 6. Supported wildcard options for like clauses. Wildcard character description % matches a string of 0 or more characters matches any single character. Examples of like clauses to match names such as Joe, Joanne, Joseph, or any other name that begins with Joe. Type the following query. Select asterisk from events where user name like Joe %. To match names that begin with Joe that are 3 characters long, such as Joe or John, type the following query. Select asterisk from events where user name like Joe. You can enter the wildcard option at any point in the command, as shown in the following examples. Select asterisk from flows where source payload like %size. Select asterisk from events where UTF-8 payload like %size Select asterisk from events where UTF-8 payload like is. Examples of string matching keywords. The keywords I like and matches are case-insensitive versions of like and matches. Select kid name kid as test from events where test like information %. Select kid name kid as test from events where test I like information on %. Select kid name kid as test from events where test matches information . Select kid name kid as test from events where test matches information . Count function. The count function returns the number of rows that satisfy the where clause of a select statement. If the select statement does not have a where clause, the count function returns the total number of rows in the table. Examples of the count function. The following query returns the count of all events with credibility that is greater than or equal to 9. Select count asterisk from events where credibility greater or equal 9. The following query returns the count of assets by location and source IP address. Select asset property, location, source IP as location, count asterisk from events. 18. IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide Group by Location Last 1 days. The following query returns the user names, source IP addresses, and count of events. Select username, source IP, count asterisk from events group by username last 600 minutes. The source IP column is returned as first source IP. One source IP is returned only per username, even if another source IP exists. Note: when you use the group by clause with a column name or AQL function, only the first value is returned for the group by column by default, even though other values might exist. AQL logical and comparison operators. Operators are used in AQL statements to determine any equality or difference between values. By using operators in the where clause of an AQL statement, the results are filtered by those results that match the conditions in the where clause. The following table lists the supported logical and comparison operators. Table 7. Logical and comparison operators. Operator description. Example asterisk multiplies two values and select asterisk returns the result. From flows where source bytes asterisk 1024 1 equals the equal to operator select asterisk compares two values and from events returns true if they are equal. Where source IP equals destination IP. Not equals compares two values and select asterisk returns true if they are from events unequal. Where source IP not equals destination IP and compares two values and select asterisk less or equal returns true if the value on from flows the left side is less than or where source bytes 64 and equal to the value on the destination bytes less or equal 64 right side and compares two values and select asterisk greater or equal returns true if the value on from flows the left side is greater than where source bytes 64 and or equal to the value on the destination bytes greater or equal 64 right side. Slash divides two values and select asterisk returns the result. From flows where source bytes slash 864. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 19 Table 7. Logical and comparison operators. Continued. Operator description example plus adds two values and returns select asterisk the result. From flows where source bytes plus destination bytes 64. Subtracts one value from select asterisk another and returns the from flows result. Where source bytes destination bytes 0. Takes a value and raises it to select asterisk the specified power and from flows returns the result. Where source bytes 256 takes the modulo of a value select asterisk and returns the result. From flows where source bytes %8 equals 7 and takes the left side and right select asterisk side of a statement and from events returns true if both are true. Where source IP equals destination IP and source port equals destination port. Between takes in a left side and to select asterisk x y values and returns true if the from events left side is between the two where magnitude between 1 and 5 values. Collate parameter to order by that select asterisk allows a BCP47 language tag from events order by to collate source IP desk collate the ch. In specifies multiple values in a select asterisk where clause. The in from events operator is a shorthand for where source IP in 192.0.2.1 1 198.51.100.0 multiple or conditions. Into creates a named cursor that select asterisk from events into contains results that can be my cursor where queried at a different time. Not takes in a statement and select asterisk from events returns true if the statement where not evaluates as false. Source IP equals destination IP. I like matches if the string past select asterisk is like the past value and from events where user name is not case sensitive. Use %I like %Bob as a wildcard. Match matches if the string select asterisk s matches the provided from events regular expression and is not where user name matches .bob $, case sensitive. 20 IBM Q radar. Q radar Arial query language guide table 7. Logical and comparison operators. Continued. Operator description example limits the number of results. Select asterisk to the provided number. From events limit 100 start 2015-10-28-10-0 stop 2015-10-28-11-00. Note. Place the limit clause in front of a start and stop clause. Like matches if the string past select asterisk is like the past value, but from events where user name is case sensitive. Use percent as a like, percent bob, percent wildcard. Matches if the string select asterisk matches the provided from events regular expression. Where user name matches dot bob dot dollar. Not takes in a value and returns select asterisk null true if the value is not null. From events where user name is not null. Or takes the left side of a select asterisk statement and the right side from events of a statement and returns where source IP equals destination IP or source port equals destination port true if either side is true. Text full text search for the select asterisk search past value. From events where text search firewall text search is valid with and sourceip equals 192.168.1.1 and operators. You can't use text search with or other operators. Otherwise, select sourceip URL you get a syntax error. From events where text search download.cdn.mozilla.net place text search in the and sourceip equals 192.168.1.1 first position of the where start 2015-01-30-16-10-12 clause. Stop 2015-02-22-17-10-22. You can also do full text searches by using the quick filter in the Q radar user interface. For information about quick filter functions, see the IBM Q radar user guide. Examples of logical and comparative operators to find events that are not passed. Type the following query. Select asterisk from events where payload equals false. To find events that return an offense and have a specific source IP address, type the following query. Chapter 2. Arial query language 21. Select asterisk from events where source IP equals 192.0.2.0 and has offense equals true. To find events that include the text firewall, type the following query. Select kid name, kid, as event name, asterisk from events where text search firewall. AQL data calculation and formatting functions use Arial query language, AQL calculation and formatting functions on search results that are retrieved from the Arial databases. This list describes the AQL functions that are used for calculations and data formatting. Base 64 on page 22, concat on page 22, date format on page 23, double on page 23, long on page 23, lower on page 25, now on page 25, pass it at a time on page 24, pass it timestamp on page 24, replace all on page 25, replace first on page 25, strlen on page 26, substring on page 26, upper on page 26. Base 64 purpose returns a base 64 encoded string that represents binary data. Example. Select base 64 payload from events. Returns the payloads for events in base 64 format. Concat purpose concatenates all past strings into one string. Example. Select concat username, sourceip, destination IP from events limit 5. 22 IBM Q radar. Q radar aerial query language guide date format purpose formats time in milliseconds since 0000 coordinated universal time UTC on January 1, 1970 to a user-readable form. Examples. Select date format start time EIMMDDHH:MM:SS as start time from events. Select date format start time EIMMDDHH:MM as start time date format end time EIMMDDHH:MM as storage time key description KID as event name from events. See more examples. Double purpose converts a value that represents a number into a double. Example. Double 1234. Long purpose converts a value that represents a number into a long integer. Examples. Select destination IP long SUM source bytes plus destination bytes as total bytes from flows group by source IP. The example returns the destination IP address and the sum of the source and destination bytes in the total bytes column. Select long source IP as long IP from events into cursor name where long IP and 0xFF0000000 equals 0x hexadecimal value of IP address 000000 group by long IP limit 20. In Q radar 7.3.1, you can use the long function to convert IP addresses into a long integer. Q radar uses long integers with bitwise operators to do IP address arithmetic and filtering in AQL queries. In the example, the source IP is returned as an integer, which is used by the bitwise AND operator. In the example, the FF corresponds with hexadecimal value of IP address, which is in the first octet position for an IP address. The cursor name can be any name that you want to use. For example, if you want to return all source IP addresses with the number 9 in the first octet, then substitute the hexadecimal value 9, which is the same as the decimal value, in hexadecimal value of IP address. Chapter 2. Aerial Query Language 23. See more examples of the long function that are used with bitwise operators. Parser time purpose pass a time value to the parser. For example, parser time reference. The time reference indicates the pass time for the query. Example. Select asterisk from events start parser time 1 hour ago. See more examples of time functions. Parser timestamp purpose pass the text representation of date and time and convert it to Unix epoch time. For example, pass the following text date format. Thursday, August 24, 2017, 3:32 p.m. GMT plus 100 and convert it to the following epoch timestamp. 1,503,588,632. This function makes it easier to issue calls from the API that are based on scripts. Example of how the time format conversion works. The following example demonstrates how the date format function converts epoch time to a text timestamp by using the specified date format. And then the parser timestamp function is used to convert the text timestamp to an epoch time format. Select start time, date format, start time, EMMD, EI, as text time format, parser timestamp, EMMD, EI, text time format, as epoch time returned from events limit 5. The following example displays an extract of the output from the query. start time, text, time, format, epoch, time, returned, 1,503,920,389,888, mon, M0828, 2017, 1,503,920,389,888. Example of how parse timestamp might be used to convert times to epoch time so that time calculations can be made. In the following example, events are returned when the time difference between logout and login times is less than 1 hour. The DMMEIHH:/MM:SS.SSSZ time format is just one example of a time format that you might use, and my login and my logout are custom properties in a known time format. For example, EMMD EI. Select asterisk from events where parse timestamp DMMEIHH:/MM:SS.SSSZ my logout parse timestamp DMMEIHH:/MM:SS.SSSZ my login 3,600,000 last 10 days. See more examples of time functions. 24 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide now purpose returns the current time that is expressed as milliseconds, since the time 0000 coordinated universal time UTC on January 1, 1970. Example. Select asset user source IP now as asset user from events. Find the user of the asset at this moment in time now. Lower purpose returns an all lowercase representation of a string. Example. Select lower username, lower log source name, log sourced from events. Returns user names and log source names in lowercase. Replace all purpose match rejects and replace all matches with text. Replaces every subsequence arg2 of the input sequence that matches the pattern arg1 with the replacement string arg3. Example. Replace all \d16 username censored. Replace first purpose match rejects and replace the first match with text. Replaces the first subsequence arg2 of the input sequence that matches the pattern arg1 with the replacement string arg3. Example. Replace first \d16 username censored. str purpose converts any parameter to a string. Example. str source IP. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 25 strlen purpose returns the length of this string. Example. Select strlen source IP strlen username from events. Returns the string length for source IP and username. strpos purpose returns the position index starts at 0 of a string in another string. Searches in string for the index of the specified substring. You can optionally specify an extra parameter to indicate at what position index to start looking for the specified pattern. The search for the string starts at the specified offset and moves towards the end of string. strpos string substring index returns -1 if the substring isn't found. Examples. Select strpos username name from events. Select strpos source IP 182 from events. Substring purpose copies a range of characters into a new string. Examples. Select substring user name 03 from events. Select substring source IP 35 from events. Upper purpose returns an all uppercase representation of a string. Example. Select upper username, upper log source name, log sourced from events. Returns user names and log source names in uppercase. 26 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide UTF-8 Purpose returns the UTF-8 string of a byte array. Example. Select UTF-8 payload from events where sourceIP equals 192.0.2.0. Returns the UTF-8 payload for events where the source IP address is 192.0.2.0. AQL data aggregation functions Arial query language. AQL aggregate functions help you to aggregate and manipulate the data that you extract from the Arial database. Data aggregation functions use the following AQL functions to aggregate data and to do calculations on the aggregated data that you extract from the AQL databases. AVG on page 27, count on page 27, first on page 28, group by on page 28, having on page 28, last on page 29, MIN on page 29, MAX on page 29, STDEV on page 29, STDEV on page 30, SUM on page 30, uniquely count on page 30. AVG purpose returns the average value of the rows in the aggregate. Example. Select sourceIP. AVG magnitude from events group by sourceIP. Count purpose returns the count of the rows in the aggregate. Chapter 2. Arial query language 27 example. Select sourceIP. Count asterisk from events group by sourceIP. See more examples. First purpose returns the first entry of the rows in the aggregate. Example. Select sourceIP. First magnitude from events group by sourceIP. Group by purpose creates an aggregate from one or more columns. To return values other than the default first value, use functions such as count, max, av. Examples. Select sourceIP. Count asterisk from events group by sourceIP, destinationIP. Select username, sourceIP. Count asterisk from events group by username last 5 minutes. The sourceIP column is returned as first sourceIP. Only one sourceIP is returned per username, even if another sourceIP exists. Select username, count sourceIP. Count asterisk from events group by username last 5 minutes. The sourceIP column is returned as count sourceIP. The count for sourceIP results is returned per username. See more examples. Having purpose uses operators on the result of a grouped by column. Example. Select sourceIP, MAX, magnitude, as MAG. 28 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide from Events Group by sourceIP having MAG 5. See more examples saved searches that include the having clause and that are used for scheduled reports or time series graphs are not supported. Last purpose returns the last entry of the rows in the aggregate. Example. Select sourceIP. Last magnitude from events group by sourceIP. MIN purpose returns the minimum value of the rows in the aggregate. Example. Select sourceIP. MIN magnitude from events group by sourceIP. MAX purpose returns the maximum value of the rows in the aggregate. Example. Select sourceIP. MAX magnitude from events group by sourceIP. STDEV purpose returns the sample standard deviation value of the rows in the aggregate. Example. Select sourceIP. STDEV magnitude from events group by sourceIP. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 29 STDEV purpose returns the population standard deviation value of the rows in the aggregate. Example. Select sourceIP. STDEV magnitude from events group by sourceIP. SUM purpose returns the sum of the rows in the aggregate. Example. Select sourceip, sum, source bytes, from flows group by sourceip. Unique count, purpose, returns the unique count of the value in the aggregate. Example. Select username, unique count, sourceip, as count src IP from events group by sourceip. AQL data retrieval functions use the Arial query language, AQL, built-in functions to retrieve data by using data query functions and field ID properties from the Arial database. Use the following AQL functions to extract data from the Arial databases. Data retrieval functions, application name, on page 31, Arial servers for EPID, on page 31, Arial servers for EPName, on page 32, asset host name, on page 33, asset property, on page 33, asset user, on page 33, category name, on page 34, componented, on page 34, domain name, on page 34, global view, on page 35. 30 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide Geo : lookup on page 35. Geo : distance on page 35. Hostname on page 36. Insider on page 36. Inoffense on page 36. Log source name on page 37. Log source group name on page 37. Log source type name on page 37. Matches asset search on page 38. Network name on page 38. Parameters exclude servers on page 39. Parameters remote servers on page 40. Processor name on page 41. Protocol name on page 42. KID name on page 42. KID description on page 42. Reference map on page 42. Reference map set contains on page 43. Reference itable on page 43. Reference asset contains on page 44. Rule name on page 44. Application name, purpose, returns, flow, application names by application ID, parameters, application ID, example. Select application name, application ID, as name of app from flows. Returns the names of applications from the flows database. These application names are listed in the name of app column, which is an alias. Arial servers for EPID purpose use the Arial servers for EPID function to specify the event processor ID when you use it with parameters remote servers or parameters exclude servers. Parameters. Arial servers for EPID processor ID. The following examples show how to use the Arial servers for EPID function with parameters remote servers or parameters exclude servers. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 31 Parameters exclude servers equals Arial servers for EPID processor ID. Parameters remote servers equals Arial servers for EPID processor ID. Examples in the following example. Only the search results from Arial servers for EPID 8 are included in the output. If the processor ID that you specify as a parameter for the Arial servers for EPID function is not in your Q Radar deployment, then the query does not run. Select Arial servers for EPID 8, Arial servers for EPID 11, processor ID, processor name, processor ID, log source name, log source ID, from events group by log source ID last 20 minutes parameters remote servers equals Arial servers for EPID 8. You can also use the Arial servers for EPID function to return the Arial servers that are connected to a specific event processor that is identified by ID, as shown in the following example. Select processor ID, processor name, processor ID, Arial servers for EPID processor ID from events group by processor ID. Arial servers for EPName purpose. You use the Arial servers for EPName function to specify the event processor name when you use it with parameters remote servers or parameters exclude servers. Parameters. Arial servers for EPName event processor name. The following examples show how you use ARIA servers for app name parameters, remote servers, or parameters exclude servers. Parameters exclude servers equals ARIA servers for app name event processor 104. Parameters remote servers equals ARIA servers for app name event processor 255. Examples in the following example. Records from servers that are associated with event processor 104 are excluded from the search. Select processorid, processor name, processorid, log source name, log sourced, from events group by log sourced, parameters exclude servers equals ARIA servers for app name, event processor 104. You can also use the function to return ARIA servers that are associated with an event processor that is identified by name. Select processor name, processorid, ARIA servers for app name, processor name, processorid, from events group by processorid. Returns ARIA servers for the named event processor. 32 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar ARIA query language guide asset host name purpose searches for the host name of an asset at a point in time. The domain can optionally be specified to target an asset on a particular domain. Asset host name source IP. Asset host name source IP now. Asset host name source IP domain ID. Parameters IP address. Timestamp and domain ID are optional. If the timestamp is not specified, the current time is used. Examples. Select asset host name, destination IP, now, as host name, from events. Select asset host name, source IP, now, as host name, from events. Returns the host name of the asset at the time of the query. Asset property purpose looks up a property for an asset. The domain can optionally be specified to target an asset on a particular domain. Asset property, unified name, source IP, domain ID. Parameters, property name, IP address, domain ID is optional. Example. Select asset property, location, source IP, as asset location, count asterisk, as event count, from events group by asset location last 1 days. Returns the asset location that is affiliated with the source IP address. Asset user purpose searches for the user of an asset at a point in time. Domain can optionally be specified to target an asset in a specific domain. Chapter 2. ARIA Query Language 33 Asset User Source IP now, Domain ID. Parameters IP address. Timestamp and domain ID are optional. If the timestamp is not specified, the current time is used. Example. Select asset user, source IP, now, as username of asset, from events. Returns the user name that is affiliated with the source IP address. Category name purpose searches for the name of a category by the category ID. Category name, category. Parameters, category example. Select source IP, category, category name, category, as category name, from events. Returns the source IP, category ID, and category name. Componented purpose retrieves the ID for a component with a given name. For example, ARIA servers for app name is a shortcut for the ARIA servers for appid componented event processor name function. Parameters. Componented component name. Example. Select asterisk from events where processorid equals componented event processor 0. Retrieves events for the named event processor. Domain name purpose searches for the domain name by the domain ID. Domain name, domain ID. 34 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar ARIA Query Language Guide Parameters Domain ID Example. Select source IP, username, domain name, domain ID, as domain name, from events. Returns source IP, user name, and domain names from events database. global new purpose returns the global new database results for a given saved search name based on the time range that is input. This query can be run only by using API. For more information about accessing a global new database, see the IBM Security QRadar Administration Guide. Parameters saved search. Time range daily, normal, hourly. Example. Select asterisk from global new top log sources daily last 2 days. Geo : lookup purpose returns location data provided by max mind for a selected IP address. Parameters IP address required strings at least 1 required. City, continent, physical country, registered country, represented country, location, postal, subdivisions, traits, GeoJSON example. Select source IP, geo : lookup source IP, city, as geo city from events last 10 minutes. Geo : distance purpose returns the distance in kilometers of 2 IP addresses. Parameters IP address 2 required. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 35 example. Select geo : distance source IP, destination IP as geo distance from events last 10 minutes. Hostname purpose returns the host name of an event processor with a certain processor ID. Hostname processor ID. Parameters processor ID example. Select hostname processor ID from events. Insider purpose filters the output of the select statement by referencing the source/destination SIDR IP address that is specified by insider. Parameters IP/SIDR IP address example. Select source IP username from events where insider 172.16.0.0/16 source IP returns the source IP and user name columns from the flows database, where the source SIDR IP address is from the 172.16.0.0/16 subnet. See more examples. In offense purpose, if an event or flow belongs to the specified offense, it returns true. Parameters offense ID example. Select asterisk from events where in offense 123. Select asterisk from flows where in offense 123. 36 IBM QRadar. QRadar Arial Query Language Guide Log Source Name Purpose looks up the name of a log source by its log source ID. Log source name, log source ID. Parameters log source ID example. Select asterisk from events where log source name, log source ID, I like, my log source name, returns only results that include my log source name in their log source name. Select log source name, log source ID, as log source from events. Returns the column alias log source, which shows log source names from the events database. Log source group name purpose searches for the name of a log source group by its log source group ID. Log source group name device group list parameters device group list example. Select source IP log source ID from events where log source group name device group list I like %other %. Returns the source IP address and log source ID for log source groups that have other in their name. Log source type name purpose searches for the name of a log source type by its device type. Log source type name device type parameters device type example. Select log source type name device type as device names count asterisk from events group by device names last 1 days. Returns device names and the event count. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 37 All log sources functions example. Select log source ID, log source name, log source ID as name of log source group name, device group list as group names, log source type name, device type as devices from events group by log sourced. Returns log source names, log source group names, and log source device names. When you use the group by function, the first item only in the group by list is shown in the results. Matches asset search purpose. If the asset is returned in the results of the saved search, it returns true. Matches asset search, my saved search, source IP. Parameters saved search name, IP address example. Matches asset search, my saved search, source IP. Network name purpose searches for the network name from the network hierarchy for the host that is passed in. Network name source IP. The domain can optionally be specified to target a network in a particular domain. Network name source IP. Domain ID. Parameters host property domain is optional. Examples. Select network name source IP. I like servers as my networks from flows. Returns any networks that have the name servers. Select network name source IP. Domain ID. I like servers as my networks from flows. Returns any networks that have the name servers in a specific domain. Select network name source IP as src net. Network name destination IP. 38 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide as best net from events. Returns the network name that is associated with the source and destination IP addresses. Parameters exclude servers, purpose filters search criteria by excluding the specified servers. Parameters server IP address port number use port 32006 for an event processor and port 32011 for a console. Parameters accept a comma-separated list of arguments. For example, host 1 port 1 host 2 port 2 host 3 port 3. Examples in the following example. Search results from 192.0.2.0 are excluded. To exclude a console, you must use localhost or 127.0.0.1. Do not use the IP address of the console in this query. Select processorid, processor name, processorid, log source name, log sourced, from events group by log sourced, parameters exclude servers equals 192.0.2.0:32,006. In the following example, search results from the console are excluded. Select processorid, processor name, processorid, log source name, log sourced, from events group by log sourced, start 2017-03-15-10-26, stop 2017-03-15-10-30, parameters exclude servers equals 127.0.0.1:32,011. In the following example, search results from the console are excluded. The console is referred to as localhost in this example. Select processorid, processor name, processorid, log source name, log sourced, from events group by log sourced, start 2017-03-15-10-25, stop 2017-03-15-10-30, parameters exclude servers equals localhost 32,011. The following example uses multiple arguments to exclude search results from the console and two other servers. Select processorid, processor name, processorid, log source name, log sourced, from events group by log sourced, start 2017-04-15-10-25, stop 2017-04-15-10-30, parameters exclude servers equals 32,11,192.0.021,32,071,723.0.2.3 Specify the ID of the event processor in your query by using the following function. Parameters exclude servers equals Arial servers for EPID processor ID. Refine your query by using Arial servers for EPID with parameters exclude servers to specify the event processor ID that you want to exclude from your search. You can specify one or more event processor ID. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 39 Example. In the following example, all results from Arial servers for EPID 8 are excluded in the search. Select processorid, processor name, processorid, log source name, log sourceid, from events group by log sourceid, last 20 minutes, parameters exclude servers equals Arial servers for EPID 8. Specify the name of the event processor in your query by using the following function. Parameters exclude servers equals Arial servers for EP name, processor name. Refine your query by using Arial servers for EP name with parameters exclude servers to specify the event processor by name. You can specify one or more event processor names. Example. In the following example, records from servers that are associated with event processor 104 are excluded from the search. Select processorid, processor name, processorid, log source name, log sourceid, from events group by log sourceid, parameters exclude servers equals Arial servers for EP name, event processor 104. Parameters remote servers purpose use the parameters remote servers function to narrow your search to specific servers, which speeds up your search by not searching all hosts. Parameters server IP address port number use port 32,006 for an event processor and port 32,011 for a console. Use a comma-separated list for multiple arguments. For example, host 1 port 1, host 2 port 2, host 3 port 3. Examples. In the following example, only the specified server is searched. Select asterisk from events start 2016-09-08-1642 stop 2016-09-08-1647 parameters remote servers equals 190.0.2.0:32,006. In the following example, multiple servers are specified, which includes search results from the console and 2 other servers. Select processorid, processor name, processorid, log source name, log sourceid, from events group by log sourceid start 2017-04-15-10-25 stop 2017-04-15-10-30 parameters remote servers equals 127.0.0.1:32,001.2.0:32,006. Specify the ID of the event processor in your query by using the following function. Parameters remote servers equals Arial servers for EPID processor ID. 40 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide. Refine your query by using Arial servers for EPID with parameters remote servers to specify the ID of the event processor that you want to include in your search. You can specify one or more event processor ID. Example. In the following example, only the search results from Arial servers for EPID 8 are included in the output. Select aerial servers for EPID 8, aerial servers for EPID 11, processorid, processor name, processorid, log source name, log sourced, from events group by log sourced, last 20 minutes, parameters, remote servers, equals, aerial servers for EPID 8. Note: if the processor ID that you specify as a parameter for the aerial servers for EPID function is not in your QRadar deployment, then the query does not run. Specify the name of the event processor in your query by using the following function. Parameters remote servers equals aerial servers for EP name event processor name. Refine your query by using aerial servers for EP name and parameters remote servers to specify the name of the event processor that you want to include in your search. You can specify one or more event processor names. Example: in the following example, only search records that are associated with event processor 104 are included in the search results. Select processorid, processor name, processorid, log source name, log sourced, from events group by log sourced, parameters remote servers equals aerial servers for EP name, event processor 104. Processor name, purpose, returns the name of a processor by the processor ID. Processor name, processorid. Parameters, processor ID number example. Select source IP, processor name, processorid, as processor name, from events. Returns the source IP address and processor name from the events database. Example. Select processorid, processor name, processorid, from events where processorid equals 104 group by processorid last 5 minutes. Returns results from the event processor that has a processor ID equal to 104. Chapter 2. Aerial Query Language 41. Protocol name purpose returns the name of a protocol by the protocol ID parameters protocol ID number example. Select source IP, protocol name, protocolid, as name of protocol from events. Returns the source IP address and protocol name from the events database. KID name purpose searches for the name of a QID by its QID. KID name, KID. Parameters, QID example. Select KID name, KID, as my event names, KID from events. Returns QID name and QID number. KID description purpose searches for the QID description by its QID. KID description, KID. Parameters, QID example. Select KID description, KID, as my event names, KID name, KID, as KID name, from events. Returns QID description and QID name. Reference map purpose searches for the value for a key in a reference map. Reference map value key domain ID. 42 IBM QRadar. QRadar Aerial Query Language Guide. Although the domain ID is optional in a domain-enabled environment, the search is limited to only shared reference data when the domain ID is excluded. Parameters string, string, integer example. Select reference map, full name lookup, username, 5, as name of user from events. Searches for the user name key in the full name lookup reference map in the specified domain, and returns the full name value for the user name key. Reference map set contains purpose if a value exists for a key in a reference map of sets. For a domain, it returns true. Reference map set contains map sets name key value. Parameters string, string, string example. Reference map set contains risky users for IPs, source IP, user name. Referencable purpose searches for the value of a column key in a table that is identified by a table key in a specific reference table collection. Referencable test table value key domain ID or referencable test table value key domain ID. Although the domain ID is optional, in a domain-enabled environment, the search is limited to only shared reference data when the domain ID is excluded. Parameters string, or IP address, integer example. Select referring citable user data, full name, username, 5 as full name, referring citable user data, location, username, 5 as location, referring citable user data, manager, username, 5 as manager from events. Returns the full name value, location value, and manager value for the username key from user data. See more reference data examples. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 43. Referring set it contains purpose. If a value is contained in a specific reference set, it returns true. Referring set it contains ref set value domain ID. Although the domain ID is optional, in a domain-enabled environment, the search is limited to only shared reference data when the domain ID is excluded. Parameters string, integer example. Select asset user, source IP, now as source asset user from flows where referring asset contains what users, username, 5, group by source asset user, last 24 hours. Returns the asset user when the username value is included in the what users reference set. Rule name purpose returns one or more rule names that are based on the rule ID or ID that are passed in. Rule name Crevent list. Rule name 3453. Parameters a single rule ID or a list of rule ID. Example. Select asterisk from events where rule name event list I like %my rule name %. Returns events that trigger a specific rule name. Select rule name 123 from events. Returns rule name by the rule ID. Time criteria in AQL queries. Define time intervals in your AQL queries by using start and stop clauses, or use the last clause for relative time references. Define the time settings that are passed to the AQL query. The select statement supports an Arial time option, which overrides the time settings. 44 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide. You can limit the time period for which an AQL query is evaluated by using the following clauses and functions. Start on page 45, stop on page 45, last on page 46, now on page 47, pass it at a time on page 47. Start. You can pass a time interval to start selecting data from time in the following formats. EIMMDDHH colon MM EIMMDDHH colon MM colon SS EI slash MM slash DDHH colon MM colon SS EI slash MM slash DDHH colon MM colon SS EI colon MM colon DDHH colon MM colon SS. The time zone is represented by Z or Z in the following formats. EIMMDDHH colon MMs. EIMMDDHH colon MMs. Use start in combination with stop. Examples. Select asterisk from events where user name is null. Start 2014-04-25-15-51. Stop 2014-04-25-17-00. Returns results from 2014-04-25-15-51-00 to 2014-04-25-16-59-59. Select asterisk from events where user name is null. Start 2014-04-25-15-51-20. Stop 2014-04-25-17-020. Returns results from 2005-04-25-17-059. Select asterisk from events. Start passing at a time 1 hour ago. Stop passing at a time now. Stop is optional. If you don't include it in the query, the stop time is equals now. Stop. You can pass a time interval to stop selecting data and time in the following formats. EIMMDDHH colon MM EIMMDDHH colon MM colon SSEI slash MM slash DDHH colon MM colon SSEI slash MM slash DDHH colon MM colon SSEI colon MM colon DDHH colon MM colon SS. The time zone is represented by Z or Z in the following formats. EIMMDDHH colon MMs. EIMMDDHH colon MMs. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 45. Use stop in combination with start. Examples. Select asterisk from events where username is null. Start 2016-04-25-14-00. Stop 2016-04-25-16-00. Select asterisk from events where username is null. Start 2016-04-25-15-030. Stop 2016-04-25-15-230. Use any format with the passing at a time function. For example, select asterisk from events. Start passing at a time 1 day ago. Even though stop is not included in this query, the stop time is equals now. Select asterisk from events. Start passing at a time 1 hour ago. Stop passing at a time now. Select asterisk from events. Start passing at a time 1 day ago. Select asterisk from events where log sources equals 69. Start 2016-06-21-15-51-0-0. Stop 2016-06-22-15-56-0-0. Last, you can pass a time interval to the last clause to specify a specific time to select data from. The valid intervals are minutes, hours, and days. Examples. Select asterisk from events last 15 minutes. Select asterisk from events last 2 days. Select asterisk from events where user name I like %dm limit 10 last 1 hours. Note: if you use a limit clause in your query, you must place it before start and stop clauses. For example, select asterisk from events limit 100 start 2016-06-28-10-00 stop 2016-06-28-11-00. 46 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide. Time functions use the following time functions to specify the pass time for the query. Now purpose returns the current time that is expressed as milliseconds, since the time 0000 coordinated universal time UTC on January 1, 1970. Example. Select asset user source it now as asset user from events. Find the user of the asset at this moment in time now. Pass it at a time purpose. Pass a time value to the parser. For example, pass it at a time reference. This time reference is the pass time for the query. Example. Select asterisk from events. Start pass it at a time 1 hour ago. AQL date and time formats use Arial Query Language. AQL date and time formats to represent times and dates in queries. The following table lists the letters that represent date and time in AQL queries. This table is based on the simple date format. Table 8. Date and time formats. Letter date or time presentation examples parameter. Y calendar year date format. Start time. YMMDD. Date example used is 20 returns date format. 16-06-20 June 2016 date format. Start time. YMMDD. Returns date format. 2016-06-20. Select date format. Device time. EIMMDD as log src date. Key description. Kid as event name from events. Y week year date format. Start time. YYMMDD. The first and last days of a week returns date format. 16-06-20 year can have different calendar date format. Start time. EIMMDD. Year values. Returns date format. 2016-06-20 date example used is 20 June 2016. Select date format. Start time. EIMMDD HH:MM as start time. Date format. End time. EIMMDD HH:MM as storage time. Key description. Kid as event name from events. Returns start time, storage time, and event name columns. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 47, Table 8. Date and time formats. Continued. Letter date or time presentation examples parameter. Month in year month date format. Start time. EIMMDD. 3 or more letters are interpreted as returns date format. 2016 June 20 text. Date format. Start time. EIMMDD. 2 letters are interpreted as a returns date format. 2016 June 20 number. Date format. Start time. EIMMDD. Date example used is 20 June 2016 returns date format. 2016-06-20. W week in year number date format. Start time. EIWWDD. Date example used is 20 returns date format. 2016-26-20 June 2016 note. 26 is week 26 in year. W week in month number date format. Start time. EIWWDD. Date example used is 20 returns date format. 2016-04-20 June 2016 note. 04 is week 4 in month. D day in year number date format. Start time. EIMMDD. Day in year represented by number returns date format. 2016-06-172 date example used is 20 note. 172 is day number 172 in year June 2016. D day in month number date format. Start time. EIMMDD. Date example used is 20 returns date format. 2016-06-20 June 2016. F day of week in number date format. Start time. EIMMFF. Month date example used is 20 returns date format. 2016-06-03 June 2016 note. 03 is day 3 of week in month. E day name in text date format. Start time. EIMMED. Week date example used is 20 returns date format. 2016-06 June 2016. AM or PM text date format. Start time. EIMMDD H. Date example used is 20-2016-06-20 PM June 2016. H. Hour in day number date format. Start time. EIMMDD H. 0-23 date example used is 20 returns date format 2016-06-2018 June 2016 note 18 is 18:00 hours. K hour in day number date format start time EIMMDD K 1-24 date example used is 20 returns date format 2016-06-2018 June 2016 note 18 is 18:00 hours. K hour in AM/PM number date format start time EIMMDD K 0-11 date example used is 20 returns date format 2016-06-26 PM June 2016 6 PM note K equals 6 and equals PM. H hour in AM/PM number date format start time EIMMDD H 1-12 date example used is 20 returns date format 2016-06-26 PM June 2016 6 PM note H equals 6 and equals PM. M minute in hour number date format start time EIMMDD H M date example used is 20 returns date format 2016-06-26 10 PM June 2016 6 10 PM note added in query to format time S second in minute number date format start time EIMMDD H M S date example used is 20 returns date format 2016-06-26 10:56 PM June 2016 6 10:56 PM note added in query to format time 48 IBM Q Radar Arial query language guide table 8 date and time formats continued letter date or time presentation examples parameter S millisecond number date format start time EIMMDD H M SS SSS date example used is 20 returns date format 2016-06-26 10:00:322 PM June 2016 6 10 PM note added in query to format time Z time zone general time zone date format start time EIMMDD H M Z date example used is 20 returns date format 2016-06-26 10 PM GMT plus 1 June 2016 6 10 PM GMT plus 1 note added in query to format time Z time zone RFC 822 time zone date format start time EIMMDD H M Z date example used is 20 returns date format 2016-06-26 10 PM plus 0100 June 2016 6 10 PM GMT plus 1 note added in query to format time X time zone ISO 8601 time zone date format start time EIMMDD H M X date example used is 20 returns date format 2016-06-26 10 PM plus 01 June 2016 6 10 PM GMT plus 1 note added in query to format time AQL subquery use an AQL subquery as a data source that is referred to or searched by the main query. Use the from or in clause to refine your AQL query by referring to the data that is retrieved by the subquery. A subquery is a nested or inner query that is referenced by the main query. The subquery is available in the following formats. Select field /s from AQL query expression. This query uses the from clause to search the output cursor of the subquery. Select field /s from events where field in AQL query expression. This query uses the in clause to specify the subquery results that match values from the subquery search. This subquery returns only one column. You can specify the results limit, but the maximum is 10,000 results. Subquery examples. The nested select statement in parenthesis is the subquery. The subquery is run first, and it provides the data that is used by the main query. The main query select statement retrieves the user names from the output cursor of the subquery. Select username from select asterisk from events where username is not null last 60 minutes. The following query returns records where the user name from the Arial database matches values in the subquery. Select asterisk from events where username in select username from events limit 10 last 5 minutes last 24 hours. The following query returns records where the source IP address from the Arial database matches the destination IP address in the subquery. Select asterisk from events where source IP in select destination IP from events. Chapter 2. Arial query language 49. The following query returns records where the source IP address from the Arial database matches the source IP addresses that are returned in the subquery. The subquery filters the data for the main select statement by locating internal hosts that interacted with high-risk entities. The query returns hosts that communicated with any hosts that interacted with high-risk entities. Select source IP as risky hosts from events where destination IP in select source IP from events where event direction equals L2R and references it contains critical watch list destination IP group by source IP last 24 hours. Grouping related events into sessions. Group events that are contextually related into sessions where you can observe event sequences and the outcomes of those event sequences. Gain insight into user activity and network activity by observing the sequence of events that occur in a session. About this task, you can use events to tell you what a user did at a specific time, but you can use transactional sessions to tell you what the user did before and after an event. Transactions give you full detail, such as a purchase on the internet or an unauthorized login attempt. The session ID is unique and is assigned to events in the same session. You define the session based on parameters such as time, user name, login, or any other criteria. You use the session by clause to create the unique sessions. For example, use the transactional sessions to do these tasks. Define a user activity based on web access events that includes a unique combination of activities. Group events by a specific user behavior session, such as website visits, downloads, or emails sent. Record when users log in to and log out of your network, and how long they log in for. The logout closes the related transaction that is initiated by the login. Pick an activity that you want to track and define the criteria for the session activity. Procedure 1. To create sessions, use the session by clause by using the following format. Session by time expression, AQL expression list, begin, Boolean expression, end, Boolean expression. The following table describes the session parameters. Table 9. Session parameters description, time expression, time, AQL expression list, begin, Boolean expression, starts a new session, end, Boolean expression. The end clause is optional and is used to finish the session. The session ID changes when any AQL expression value changes, or when the begin or end Boolean expression is true. 2. To test an example, take the following steps. 50 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide. To go to the IBM Q Radar API documentation page, from the Help menu, click Interactive API for Developers. B. Click 8.0 or the highest version to expand the menu. C. Click /Arial/searches. D. Click the Post tab. E. Enter your AQL query in the value field for the query expression parameter. For example, select session ID, date format, start time. EIMMDDHH:MM:SS, start time, username, sourceip, category from events into your cursor name, where username is not null, session by start time username, sourceip begin category equals 16,001 start 2016-09-14-14-20 stop 2016-09-14-14-50. Your cursor name is any name that you want to use for the results output. F. Click try it out. If the query runs without errors, the response code is 201. G. Click /Arial/searches/search ID /results the 8.0 get /Arial/searches/search ID /results page opens. H. In the value field for the search ID parameter, type your cursor name. I. Select text/table for the MIME type. J. Click try it out. Table 10. Query results session ID start time username sourceip category 1 2016-09-14-14 02 admin 9.2 3.1 16,003 1 2016-09-14 14 09 admin 9.2 3.1 1.97 16,003 2 2016-09-14 14 42 10 admin 127.0.0.1 16,003 2 2016-09-14 14 42 11 admin 127.0.0.1 16,003 3 2016-09-14 14 42 27 Joe logs 9.2 3.1 1.98 16,001 4 2016-09-14 14 44 11 Joe logs 9.2 3.1 1.98 16,001 5 2016-09-14 14 44 35 Rue 2016-09-14 14 44 35 Route 127.0.0.1 3014 5 2016-09-14 14 44 55 Route 127.0.0.1 4017 5 2016-09-14 14 44 55 Route 127.0.0.1 3014. The categories represent specific activities in your event logs. A new session is started for every change of user name and source IP address values. For example, see sessionid2 and sessionid5. Also, a new session is created for category 16001, which occurs in sessionid3 and sessionid4. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 51 example. In this example, events are returned and grouped by unique session ID, where the user Joe logs in and starts a process between 4 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. on November 25. Select session ID date format. Start time. EIMMDDHH:MM:SS. Start time. Username sourceip category from events into cursor name where username equals Joe Blogs session by start time username sourceip begin category equals 16,001 END category equals 16,003 start 2016-11-25 1600 stop 2016-11-25 23:30. A session is started when you get an event where the begin expression is met or the previous event ends the session. A session is ended when you get an event where the end expression is true or the next event starts a new session. Event category 16,001 indicates a user login or logout event on the console, and event category 16,003 indicates that a user initiated a process, such as starting a backup or generating a report. For a list of event categories, see the IBM Security Q Radar Administration Guide. Transactional query refinements refine transactional AQL queries by using the explicit expression with the begin and end expressions. Also, use the timeout and time window expressions to specify time intervals. Use the explicit expression with the begin and end expressions to apply more precise filtering to your transactional queries. For example, you might use the begin expression with the explicit end expression to capture several begin unsuccessful login attempts, which are followed by an explicit end successful login. Use the timeout and time window expressions to apply time filters for the sessions in your transactional queries. Expressions use the expressions that are described in the following to refine your transactional AQL query. Table 11. AQL transactional query expressions description begin a session is started when you get an event where the begin expression is met or the previous event ends the session. Explicit begin starts a new session only if the explicit begin expression is true. END a session is ended when you get an event where the END expression is true or the next event starts a new session. Explicit END closes the current session only if the explicit END expression is true. Timeout closes the session when the specified timeout period elapses from the time that the previous event occurred to the time that the current event happened. Time window tracks the session time. Closes the session when the specified time window period elapses from the time that the first event occurred to the time that the current event happened. 52 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide Syntax. Session by time expression list explicit begin boolean expression explicit end boolean expression timeout integer literal milliseconds time window integer literal seconds minutes hours days. The following examples show the examples of results that you get by using different combinations of the available query expressions. Begin and end expressions. A begin expression starts a session when an event matches the begin expression, or the previous event ends the session. An end expression ends a session when the end expression is true for an event, or the next event starts a new session. By using the explicit expression with the begin and end expressions, you apply a more precise filter that refines the result set. See the following examples of queries and results. The following query example uses begin and end expressions. Select session ID, date format, start time, EIMMDDHH:MM:SS, start time, username, sourceip, category from events into TR1 where username equals user X, session by start time username, source begin category equals 16,001 end category equals 16,003 start 2016 12 10 16 0 0 stop 2016 12 10 23 30 event category 16,001 indicates a user login or logout event on the console, and event category 16,003 indicates that a user initiated a process, such as starting a backup or generating a report. The following table shows the results for the query that uses begin and end. Table 12. Begin and end query results session ID start time user name source category 1 2016 12 10 16 0 0 6 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,001 1 2016 12 10 16 0 0 6 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,003 2 2016 12 10 16 0 0 6 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,003 3 2016 12 10 16 0 10 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,001 3 2016 12 10 16 0 10 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,003 4 2016 12 10 16 0 11 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,003 3 2016 12 10 16 0 11 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,001 3 2016 12 10 16 0 11 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,003 Note: Session id2 consists of only one event that closes it, category 16,003. A session that has one event is an exception and can happen. Explicit begin and end expressions events are skipped when a session is not started and an event is not an explicit begin event. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 53 Select Session ID Date Format Start Time EIMMDHH:MM:SS Start Time Username Source Category from events into TR2 where username equals user X session by start time username source explicit begin category equals 16,001 end category equals 16,003 start 2016 12 10 16 0 0 stop 2016 12 10 23 30 The following table shows the results for the query that uses explicit begin and end. Table 13. Explicit begin and end query results session ID start time user name source category 1 2016 12 10 16 0 0 6 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,001 1 2016 12 10 16 0 0 6 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,003 2 2016 12 10 16 0 0 7 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,001 2 2016 12 10 16 0 0 7 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,003 3 2016 12 10 16 0 11 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,001 3 2016 12 10 16 0 11 user x 10.2.2.1 0 16,003 3 2016 12 10 16 0 11 user x 10.2.2.10 16,003 4 2016 12 10 16 0 14 user x 10.2.2.10 16,001 5 2016 12 10 16 0 15 user x 10.2.2.10 16,001 5 2016 12 10 16 0 15 user x 10.2.2.10 16,003 only events that satisfy the explicit begin expression are returned. Session id 2 and session id 4 in the explicit begin and end don't satisfy the explicit begin expression. Begin and explicit end close current session only if the explicit end expression is true. There are no more checks for begin events in the session when the explicit end expression is true. Multiple begin events in a single session can be associated with one explicit end expression. For example, you might use the explicit end expression for counting multiple failed login attempts that are followed by a successful login during a specific time interval session timeout. The following query example uses begin and explicit end expressions. Select session ID, date format, start time, EIMMDHH:MM:SS, start time, username, sourceip, category from events into TR3 where username equals user X, session by start time username, sourceip begin category equals 16,001 explicit end category equals 16,003 start 2016 12 10 16 0 0 stop 2016 12 10 23 30. The following table shows the results for the query that uses begin and explicit end expressions. Table 14. Begin and explicit end query results session ID start time user name sourceip category 1 2016 12 10 16 0 0 6 user x 10.2.2.10 16,001 54 IBM Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide Table 14. Begin and explicit end query results. Continued session ID start time user name sourceip category 1 2016 12 10 16 0 0 6 user x 10.2.2.10 16,003 2016 12 10 16 0 0 7 user x 10.2.2.10 16,003 2016 12 10 16 0 10 user x 10.2.2.10 16,001 2016 12 10 16 0 10 user x 10.2.2.10 16,003 3 2016 12 10 16 0 11 user x 10.2.2.10 16,001 3 2016 12 10 16 0 11 user x 10.2.2.10 16,003 4 2016 12 10 16 0 12 user x 10.2.2.10 16,003 4 2016 12 10 16 0 12 user x 10.2.2.10 16,001 4 2016 12 10 16 0 12 user x 10.2.2.10 16,003 5 2016-12-10-16-013 user x 10.2.2.1-016-2016-12-10-16-011 user x 10.2.2.10-16,003. Explicit begin and explicit end events are ignored when a session is not started, and an event is not an explicit begin event. Close current session only if the explicit end expression is true. There are no more checks for begin events in the session when the explicit end expression is true. The following query example uses both explicit begin and explicit end expressions. Select session ID, date format, start time, EIMMDDHH:MM:SS, start time, username, sourceip, category from events into TR4 where username equals user X, session by start time username, sourceip explicit begin category equals 16,001 explicit end category equals 16,003 start 2016-12-10-16-00 stop 2016-12-10-23-30. The following table shows the results for the query that uses both explicit begin and explicit end expressions. Table 15. Explicit begin and explicit end query results session ID start time user name sourceip category 1 2016-12-10-16-006 user x 10.2.2.10-16,001 2016-12-10-16-006 user x 10.2.2.10-16,003 2016-12-10-16-010 user x 10.2.2.10-16,001 2016-12-10-16-010 user x 10.2.2.10-16,003 2016-12-10-16-011 user x 10.2.2.10-16,001 2016-12-10-16-012 user x 10.2.2.10-16,001 2016-12-10-16-012 user x 10.2.2.10-16,003 2016-12-10-16-013 user x 10.2.2.10-16,001 2016-12-10-16-014 user x 10.2.2.10-16,001. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 55, Table 15. Explicit begin and explicit end query results. Continued. Session ID start time user name sourceip category 4 2016-12-10-16-014 user x 10.2.2.10-16,003 5 2016-12-10-16-015 user x 10.2.2.10-16,001 5 2016-12-10-16-015 user x 10.2.2.10-16,003. Timeout closes the session when the specified timeout period elapses from the time that the previous event occurred to the time that the current event happened. The current event becomes part of a new session. The timeout value is specified in milliseconds. The following query example uses the timeout expression. Select session ID, date format, start time, EIMMDDHH:MM:SS.SSS, start time, username, sourceip, category from events into TR5 where username equals user X, session by start time username, source IP begin category equals 16,001 explicit end category equals 16,003 timeout 3,600 start 2016-12-10-16-00 stop 2016-12-10-23-30. The following table shows the results for the query that uses the timeout expression. Table 16. Timeout query results session ID start time user name source IP category 1 2016 12 10 16 0 0 colon 0 6.716 user X 10.2.2.1 0 16,003 2 2016 12 10 16 0 0 colon 10.328 user X 10.2.2.1 0 16,001. Session id 1 is ended, and session id 2 is started, because the timeout of 3,600 is exceeded. Time window tracks the session time. Closes the session when the specified time window period elapses from the time that the first event occurred to the time that the current event happened. The current event becomes part of a new session. The time window value can be specified in seconds, minutes, hours, or days. The following query example uses the time window expression. Select session ID, date format, start time, EIMMDDHH, SS.SSS, start time, username, source IP, category from events into TR6 where username equals user X, session by start time username, source IP begin category equals 16,001 explicit END category equals 16,003 time window 3000 start 2016-12-10-16-00 stop 2016-12-10-23-30. The following table shows the results for the query that uses the time window expression. Table 17. Time window query results session ID start time user name source IP category 1 2016 12 10 16 0 0 colon 0 6.415 user X 10.2.2.1 0 16,001. 56 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide Table 17. Time window query results continued session ID start time user name source IP category 1 2016 12 10 16 0 0 colon 0 6.433 user X 10.2.2.1 0 16,003 2 2016 12 10 16 0 0 colon 0 6.716 user X 10.2.2.1 0 16,003 3 2016 12 10 16 0 0 colon 10.328 user X 10.2.2.1 0 16,001 3 2016 12 10 16 0 0 colon 0 6.328 user X 10.2.2.1 0 16,003. Session id 1 is within the time window expression time, but session id 2 is ended because the time window of 3,600 is exceeded. Conditional logic in AQL queries. Use conditional logic in AQL queries by using if and case expressions. Use conditional logic in your AQL queries to provide alternative options, depending on whether the clause condition evaluates to true or false. Case statements, case expressions return a Boolean true or false result. When an expression is returned as true, the value of that case expression is returned, and processing is stopped. If the Boolean result is false, then the value of the else clause is returned. In the following example, when the user name is root, the value of the case expression that is returned is admin root. When the user name is admin, the value of the case expression that is returned is admin user. If the case expressions return a boolean false, the value of the else clause is returned. Select case username when root, then admin root, when admin, then admin user, else other, end from events. When the when statement is true, the then statement is processed, otherwise processing finishes. If then, else statements between then and else are processed when the if statement is true. In this example, when the if condition is true, admin is returned when the user name is root, otherwise the user name is returned from the events log. Select source if username equals root, then admin, else username as user from events. In the following example, if the log has no user name, then get it from the asset model. Otherwise, the user name is returned from the events log. Select source if username is null, then asset user source else username as username from events group by username last 2 days. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 57 Bitwise operators in AQL queries enhance the filtering capability and performance of your AQL queries that include IP addresses by using bitwise operators. Specify filters at the IP address octet level to return specific results. By filtering on octets in an IP address, you can refine the IP address search criteria. For example, to search for specific device types whose last octet in a source IP address ends in 100, such as XYZ.100, you can use the following query. Select long source IP as long IP source IP from events into cursor name where long IP and 0x000000ff equals 0x00000064 group by long IP order by long IP. In the example, the source IP is returned as an integer. The integer is used by the bitwise and operator. The hexadecimal value ff in the last octet position for the source IP address specifies a filter in the corresponding IP address octet position of 0x000000 IP address octet hexadecimal value. In this case, the hexadecimal value 64 is substituted for the decimal value 100 in the IP address. The result is all source IP addresses that end in 100. The results can be a list for a specific device type for a company if the last octet of all of the IP addresses is 100. The following examples outline scenarios to use when you search with bitwise operators. Bitwise and examples returns all IP addresses that match 10.xxx.xxx.xxx. Select long source IP as long IP source IP from events into T1 where long IP and 0xff0000000 equals 0x0a0000000 group by long IP limit 50. Returns all IP addresses that match xxx.100xxx.xxx. Select long source IP as long IP source IP from events into T2 where long IP and 0x00ff0000 equals 0x00640000 group by long IP order by long IP. Returns all IP addresses that match xxx.xxx.220xxx. Select long source IP as long IP source IP from events into T3 where long IP and 0x0000ff00 equals 0x000dc00 group by long IP order by long IP. Returns all IP addresses that match xxx.xxx.xxx.1. Select long source IP as long IP source IP from events where long IP and 0x000000ff equals 0x00000001 group by long IP order by long IP. 58 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide Bitwise Not Tilde. Examples. Use the following examples to convert each 1-bit value to a 0-bit value, or each 0-bit value to a 1-bit value, in a given binary pattern. Select tilde 123,456,789 from events limit 1. Returns 123,456,790. Select tilde 0 from events limit 1. Returns -1. Select tilde 2,147,483,647 from events limit 1. Returns 2,147,483,648. Bitwise or examples. Use the following examples. Compare 2 bits. If both bits have a value of 1, then the query returns a 1. If both bits have a value of 0, then the query returns a 0. Select destination IP, long destination IP, source IP, long source IP as source IP, long destination IP, source IP from events where destination IP equals 127.0.0.1 limit 1. Select destination IP, long destination IP, source IP, tilde long source IP as not source IP, long destination IP, not source IP from events where destination IP equals 127.0.0.1 limit 1. Select 2,147,483,648 2,147,483,647 from events limit 1. Returns -1. Bitwise XOR examples. The following examples can be used to take 2-bit patterns, or a pair of bits from each position, and convert them to either a 1 or a 0. If the bits are different, the result in that position is 1. If the bits are identical, the result in that position is 0. Select 2,147,483,647 2,147,483,647 from events limit 1. Returns 0. Select 12,345 6,789 as a tilde 12,345 and 6,789, 12,345 and tilde 6,789 as B. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 59 from events limit 1. Returns 10,940, 10,940. Shift left examples. The number of places to shift is given as the second argument to the shift operator. Select -1, 1 as a from events limit 1. Returns -2. Select 16, 1 as a from events limit 1. Returns 128. Shift right examples. The operator uses the sign bit, which is the leftmost bit, to fill the trailing positions after the shift. If the number is negative, then 1 is used as a filter, and if the number is positive, then 0 is used as a filter. Select 16, 3 as a from events limit 1. Returns 2. Select -32,768, 15 as a from events limit 1. Returns -1. shift right unsigned example always fills 0 regardless of the sign of the number. Select -133 from events limit 1. Returns 2,147,483,647 dividing by the power of 2. Select 20 plus 44 1a, 20 plus 44 2b, 20 plus 44 3c, 20 plus 44 4d, 20 plus 44 5e from events limit 1. 60 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide SIDA IP addresses in AQL queries. You can insert SIDA IP addresses IP4 or IP6 in your AQL statements to query by IP address range, source IP, destination IP, or you can exclude specific SIDA IP addresses. Examples of SIDA IP addresses in AQL queries: query by source SIDA IP address or by destination SIDA IP address. Select asterisk from flows where in SIDA 10.100.100.0/24 source IP. Select asterisk from flows where in SIDA 10.100.100.0/24 destination IP. Select asterisk from flows where in SIDA FF02:0:0:0:0:1:FF2F:29D6 destination 6. Query for flows that have a source or destination SIDA IP address of 10.100.100.0/24. Select asterisk from flows where in SIDA 10.100.100.0/24 source IP or in SIDA 10.100.100.0/24 destination IP. Query for events where 192.168.222.0/24 is not the source SIDA IP address. Select asterisk from events where not in SIDA 192.168.222.0/24 source IP. Query for flows where 192.168.222.0/24 is not the destination SIDA IP address. Select asterisk from flows where not in SIDA 192.168.222.0/24 destination IP. Custom properties in AQL queries. You can call a custom property directly in your AQL statements. If the custom property contains spaces, you must use double quotation marks to encapsulate the custom property. You must enable a custom property before you can use it in an AQL statement. If the custom property is not enabled, you will be able to run your AQL query, but you will not get results. Custom property example. Select Bluecoat CS host, source IP. Bluecoat CS URI from events where log source group name, device group list, I like, %proxies, and Bluecoat CS host, I like, %facebook.com, %group by source IP. Bluecoat CS host is the host name from the client's URL that is requested. Bluecoat CS URI is the original URL that is requested. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 61 System Performance Query Examples. You can use or edit examples of system performance AQL queries to run in your network. Use the following query examples to get information about system performance in your network, or edit these examples to build your own custom queries. Disk utilization and CPU usage. Select hostname. Metric ID, AVG, value, as av value, element from events where log source name, log source id, I like, %health, and metric ID equals system CPU, or metric ID equals disk utilization device, group by hostname, metric ID, element order by hostname last 20 minutes. This query outputs the hostname, metric ID, av value, and element columns. The av value column returns an average value for CPU usage and disk utilization. Disk utilization by partition. Select hostname, avg value as disk usage element from events where log source name, log sourceid, I like, %, health, %, and metric ID equals disk usage group by hostname, element order by hostname last 2 hours. This query outputs the hostname, disk usage, and element columns. The disk usage column returns a value for disk usage for the directories that are listed in the element column. Disk usage in gigabytes, GB, per partition. Select element as partition name, max, value /1024 1024 1024 as gigabytes used from events where metric ID equals disk space used group by element order by gigabytes used desk last 2 days. This query outputs the partition name and the gigabytes used columns from the events database. The gigabytes used column returns a value for the gigabytes that are used by each partition that is listed in the gigabytes used column for the last 2 days. Copying query examples from the AQL guide. If you copy and paste a query example that contains single or double quotation marks from the AQL guide, you must retype the quotation marks to be sure that the query passes. 62 IBM QRadar. QRadar Arial Query Language Guide Events and Flows Query Examples. Use or edit query examples to create events and flows queries that you can use for your AQL searches. Use the following query examples to get information about events and flows in your network, or edit these examples to build your own custom queries. Event rates and flow rates for specific hosts. Select av value, metric ID, host name from events where log source name, log sourceid, I like, %, health, %, and metric ID equals flow rate, or metric ID equals event rate. Group by metric ID, host name last 15 minutes. This query outputs the avg value, metric ID, and hostname columns from the events or flows database for the last 15 minutes. The avg value column returns a value for the average flow or event rate over the last 15 minutes for the host that is named in the hostname column. EPS rates by log source. Select log source name, log sourceid, as my log sources, sum, event count, /2.0 *60 *60 as EPS rates from events group by log sourceid order by EPS rates desk last 2 hours. This query outputs my log sources and EPS rates columns from events. The my log sources column returns log source names, and the EPS rates column returns the EPS rates for each log source in the last 2 hours. Event counts and event types per day. Select date format, device time, DDMMEI, as date of log source, key description, KID, as description of event, count asterisk, from events where device time, now, 7 asterisk 24 asterisk 3600 asterisk 1000, group by date of log source, KID last 4 days. This query outputs the date of log source, description of event, and count of event columns from events. The date of the event, description of event, and count of events are returned for the last 4 days. Monitoring local to remote flow traffic by network. Select source IP, long, SUM, source bytes plus destination bytes as total bytes from flows where flow direction equals L2R and network name, source IP, I like, servers. Chapter 2. Arial, query, language, 63, group by, source IP, order by, total bytes. This query outputs the source IP and total bytes columns. The total bytes column returns the sum of the source and destination bytes that crosses from local to remote. Monitoring remote to local flow traffic by network. Select source IP, long, SUM, source bytes plus destination bytes as total bytes from flows where flow direction equals R2L and network name, source IP, I like, servers, group by source IP, order by total bytes. This query outputs the source IP and total bytes columns. The total bytes column returns the sum of the source and destination bytes from remote to local. Copying query examples from the AQL guide. If you copy and paste a query example that contains single or double quotation marks from the AQL guide, you must retype the quotation marks to be sure that the query passes. Reference data query examples use AQL queries to get data from reference sets, reference maps, or reference tables. You can create and populate reference data by using rules to populate reference sets, by using external threat feeds, for example, LDAP Threat Intelligence app, or by using imported data files for your reference set. Use the following examples to help you create queries to extract data from your reference data. Use reference tables to get external metadata for user names that show up in events. Select referencable user data, full name, username, as full name, referencable user data, location, username, as location, referencable user data, manager, username, as manager, uniquely count, username, as userid count, uniquely count, source IP, as source IP count, count asterisk, as event count, from events where kid name, kid, I like, percent logon, percent group by full name, location, manager, last 1 days. Use the reference table to get external data, such as the full name, location, and manager name for users who logged into the network in the last 24 hours. Get the global user ID for users in events who are flagged for suspicious activity. Select reference map, global ID mapping, username, as global ID, referencable user data, full name, global ID, as full name, uniquely count, username, count asterisk, as event count, from events where rule name, cree event list, I like, percent suspicious, percent. 64 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide Group by Global ID last 2 days. In this example, individual users have multiple accounts across the network. The organization requires a single view of a user's activity. Use reference data to map local user ID to a global ID. The query returns the user accounts that are used by a global ID for events that are flagged as suspicious. Use a reference map lookup to extract global user names for user names that are returned in events. Select kid name, kid, as event name, start time as time, source IP as source IP, destination IP as destination IP, username as event username, reference map, global ID mapping, username as global user, from events where global user equals John Ariel, last 1 days. Use the reference map to look up the global user names for user names that are returned in events. Use the where clause to return only events for the global user John Ariel. John Ariel might have a few different user names, but these user names are mapped to a global user. For example, in an external identity mapping system, you can map a global user to several user names used by the same global user. monitoring high network utilization by users. Select long, referring citable, peer group, stats, average, referring semap, peer group, username, as p gave, long, referring citable, peer group, stats, stdev, referring semap, peer group, username, as p gstd, sum, source bytes, plus destination bytes, as user total from flows where flow type equals L2R group by user total having user total PG av plus 3 asterisk PG std. Returns user names where the flow utilization is 3 times greater than the average user. You need a reference set to store network utilization of peers by user name and total bytes. Threat ratings and categories. Select referring citable, IP, threat data, category, destination IP, as, threat category, referring citable, IP, threat data, rating, destination IP, as, threat rating, uniquely count, source IP, as, source IP count, uniquely count, destination IP, as, destination IP count, from events group by, threat category, threat rating, last 24 hours. Returns the threat category and the threat rating. You can look up reference table threat data and include it in your searches. Copying query examples from the AQL guide. If you copy and paste a query example that contains single or double quotation marks from the AQL guide, you must retype the quotation marks to be sure that the query passes. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 65 User and Network Monitoring Query Examples. Use query examples to help you create your user and network monitoring query AQL queries. Use the following examples to monitor your users and network, or you can edit the queries to suit your requirements. Find users who used the VPN to access the network from 3 or more IP addresses in a 24-hour period. Select username, uniquely count, source IP, as, source IP count, from events where log source name, log source id, I like, %VPN, and username is not null group by username having, source IP count, greater or equal 3 order by, source IP count, best last 24 hours. This query outputs the username and source IP count columns. The username column returns the names of users who used the VPN to access the network from 3 or more IP addresses in the last 24 hours. Find users who used the VPN from more than one geographic location in 24 hours. Select username, uniquely count, geographic location, as, count of locations, from events where log source name, log source id, I like, %VPN, and geographic location, other location, and username is not null group by username having, count of locations, 1 order by, count of locations, best last 3 days. This query outputs the username and count of locations columns. The username column returns the names of users who used the VPN from more than one location that is not called other location in the last 24 hours. Monitoring local to remote flow traffic by network. Select source IP, long, SUM, source bytes plus destination bytes as total bytes from flows where flow direction equals L2R and network name, source IP, I like, servers, group by source IP, order by total bytes. This query outputs the source IP and total bytes columns. The total bytes column returns the sum of the source and destination bytes that crosses from local to remote. 66 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide Monitoring Remote to Local Flow Traffic by Network. Select source IP, long, SUM, source bytes plus destination bytes as total bytes from flows where flow direction equals R2L and network name, source IP, I like, servers, group by source IP, order by total bytes. This query outputs the source IP and total bytes columns. The total bytes column returns the sum of the source and destination bytes from remote to local. Application usage by application name, users, and flows traffic. Select source IP as source IP, first destination IP as destination IP, application name, application ID as application, date format, last packet time, DDMMEIHH:(M:)SS as start time, first source bytes as source bytes, asset user, source IP, now as src asset user from flows group by source IP order by source bytes desk. This query outputs data about your asset users, application names, and flow data. Use this query to report specific user activity or application usage, or to build a variation of this query to achieve your desired results. Location of assets. Select asset property, location, source IP as asset location, count asterisk from events group by asset location last 1 days. This query outputs the asset location and count columns. The asset location column returns the location of the assets. Copying query examples from the AQL guide. If you copy and paste a query example that contains single or double quotation marks from the AQL guide, you must retype the quotation marks to be sure that the query passes. Event, flow, and CMARC fields for AQL queries use the Arial query language, AQL, to retrieve specific fields from the events, flows, and CMARC tables in the Arial database. Supported event fields for AQL queries. The event fields that you can query are listed in the following table. Chapter 2. Arial Query Language 67, Table 18. Supported event fields for AQL queries. Field name, description, key, value, category, low level, category, event, list, matched, custom, rule, credibility, destination, destination, port, destination, 6, IP, 6, destination, address, destination IP, destination, IP, source address, device, time, log, source, time, device, type, log, source, type, device group list, domain ID, duration, end, time, storage, time, event, count, direction, local to local, L2L, local to remote, L2R, remote to local, R2L, remote to remote, R2R. Geographic location, source, geographic location, destination, geographic location, geographic location, has identity, offense, associated with offense, high level, category, identity, host name, identity, IP, address, is duplicate, is CRE, event, is custom, rule, event, log source ID. 68 IBM Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide Table 18. Supported event fields for AQL queries. Continued field name, description, magnitude, packet, partial match list, payload, post, NAT, destination, IP, after NAT, post, NAT, destination, port, after NAT, post, NAT, source, IP, after NAT, post, NAT, source, port, after NAT, pre-NAT, destination, IP, before NAT, pre-NAT, destination, port, before NAT, pre-NAT, source, IP, before NAT, pre-NAT, source, port, before NAT, protocol, processor ID, event, processor ID, KID, event, name, ID, relevance, severity, source, IP, MAC, port, source, 6, IP, 6, source, start, time, is unpassed, event, is unpassed, user name, Supported flow fields for AQL queries. The flow fields that you can query are listed in the following table. Table 19. Supported flow fields for AQL queries. Field name, description, application ID, category, credibility, destination, ASN, bytes. Chapter 2. Arial query language 69. Table 19. Supported flow fields for AQL queries. Continued field name, description, destination, DSCP, destination, flags, destination, IP, destination, if index, packets, destination, payload, destination, port, destination, precedence, destination, 6, if, 6, destination, domain ID, full match list, first packet, time, flow bias, direction, local to local, L, local to remote, L2, R, remote to local, R2, L, remote to remote, R2, R. Flow interface ID, flow source, type, geographic, matches, geographic, location, has destination, payload, has offense, payload, has source, icomp, code, type, or code, flow interface, interval ID is duplicate, event, last packet, time, partial match list, protocol ID, kid. 70 IBM Q radar Arial query language guide, table 19. Supported flow fields for AQL queries. Continued field name, description, processor ID, event, processor ID, relevance, retention bucket, dummy, severity, source, ASN, bytes, DSCP, flags, IP, if index, packets, payload, port, precedence, 6, if, start time, view object, pair. Supported CMAC fields for AQL queries. The CMAC fields that you can query are listed in the following table. Table 20. Supported CMAC fields for AQL queries. Field name, description, destination, port, key, creator, destination, type, key, creator, device, ID, key, creator, direction, key, creator, event, count, key, creator, event, flag, key, creator, application, ID, key, creator, flow, count, key, creator, destination, bytes, key, creator, flow, source, key, creator, source, bytes, key, creator, last packet, time, key, creator. Chapter 2. Arial query language 71, table 20. Supported CMAC fields for AQL queries. Continued field name, description, protocol ID, key, creator, source, key, creator, source, type, key, creator, source, remote network, key, creator, destination, remote network, key, creator, source, country, geographic, key, creator, destination, country, geographic, key, creator, destination, key, creator. 72 IBM Q radar Arial query language guide notices this information was developed for products and services offered in the USA. IBM may not offer the products, services, or features discussed in this document in other countries. Consult your local IBM representative for information on the products and services currently available in your area. Any reference to an IBM product, program, or service is not intended to state or imply that only that IBM product, program, or service may be used. Any functionally equivalent product, program, or service that does not infringe any IBM intellectual property right may be used instead. However, it is the user's responsibility to evaluate and verify the operation of any non-IBM product, program, or service. IBM may have patents or pending patent applications covering subject matter described in this document. The furnishing of this document does not grant you any license to these patents. You can send license inquiries in writing to IBM Director of Licensing, IBM Corporation, North Castle Drive, Armonk, NY 10504-1785 USA. For license inquiries regarding double byte character set DBCS information, contact the IBM Intellectual Property Department in your country or send inquiries in writing to Intellectual Property Licensing Legal and Intellectual Property Law IBM Japan Limited. 19-21 Nihonbashi Hakazakicho, Chuoku, Tokyo 103-8510, Japan. International Business Machines Corporation provides this publication, as is, without warranty of any kind, either express or implied, including, but not limited to, the implied warranties of non-infringement, merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Some jurisdictions do not allow disclaimer of express or implied warranties in certain transactions. Therefore, this statement may not apply to you. This information could include technical inaccuracies or typographical errors. Changes are periodically made to the information herein. These changes will be incorporated in new editions of the publication. IBM may make improvements and or changes in the product and or the program described in this publication at any time without notice. Any references in this information to non-IBM websites are provided for convenience only and do not in any manner serve as an endorsement of those websites. The materials at those websites are not part of the materials for this IBM product, and use of those websites is at your own risk. IBM may use or distribute any of the information you provide in any way it believes appropriate without incurring any obligation to you. Licensees of this program who wish to have information about it for the purpose of enabling the exchange of information between independently created programs and other programs, including this one, and Roman 2, the mutual use of the information which has been exchanged, should contact IBM Director of Licensing, IBM Corporation, North Castle Drive, MDNC 119, Armonk, NY 10504-1785 US. Such information may be available, subject to appropriate terms and conditions, including, in some cases, payment of a fee. Copyright IBM Corp. 2013. 1973. The licensed program described in this document and all licensed material available for it are provided by IBM under terms of the IBM Customer Agreement, IBM International Program License Agreement, or any equivalent agreement between us. The performance data and client examples cited are presented for illustrative purposes only. Actual performance results may vary depending on specific configurations and operating conditions. Information concerning non-IBM products was obtained from the suppliers of those products, their published announcements, or other publicly available sources. IBM has not tested those products and cannot confirm the accuracy of performance, compatibility, or any other claims related to non-IBM products. Questions on the capabilities of non-IBM products should be addressed to the suppliers of those products. Statements regarding IBM future direction or intent are subject to change or withdrawal without notice and represent goals and objectives only. All IBM prices shown are IBM suggested retail prices, are current, and are subject to change without notice. Dealer prices may vary. This information contains examples of data and reports used in daily business operations. To illustrate them as completely as possible, the examples include the names of individuals, companies, brands, and products. All of these names are fictitious, and any similarity to actual people or business enterprises is entirely coincidental. Trademarks IBM, the IBM logo, and IBM.com registered are trademarks or registered trademarks of International Business Machines Corp., registered in many jurisdictions worldwide. Other product and service names might be trademarks of IBM or other companies. A current list of IBM trademarks is available on the web at copyright and trademark information at www.ibm.com/legal/copytrade.html. Java trademark and all Java-based trademarks and logos are trademarks or registered trademarks of Oracle and /or its affiliates. Terms and conditions for product documentation permissions for the use of these publications are granted subject to the following terms and conditions. Applicability. These terms and conditions are in addition to any terms of use for the IBM website. Personal use. You may reproduce these publications for your personal, non-commercial use provided that all proprietary notices are preserved. You may not distribute, display, or make derivative work of these publications, or any portion thereof, without the express consent of IBM. Commercial use. You may reproduce, distribute, and display these publications solely within your enterprise, provided that all proprietary notices are preserved. You may not make derivative works of these publications, or reproduce, distribute, or display these publications, or any portion thereof outside your enterprise, without the express consent of IBM. 74. Notices rights except as expressly granted in this permission. No other permissions, licenses, or rights are granted, either express or implied, to the publications, or any information, data, software, or other intellectual property contained therein. IBM reserves the right to withdraw the permissions granted herein whenever, in its discretion, the use of the publications is detrimental to its interest or, as determined by IBM, the above instructions are not being properly followed. You may not download, export, or re-export this information except in full compliance with all applicable laws and regulations, including all United States export laws and regulations. IBM makes no guarantee about the content of these publications. The publications are provided as is and without warranty of any kind, either expressed or implied, including but not limited to implied warranties of merchantability, non-infringement, and fitness for a particular purpose. IBM Online Privacy Statement. IBM software products, including software as a service solutions. Software offerings may use cookies or other technologies to collect product usage information, to help improve the end user experience, to tailor interactions with the end user, or for other purposes. In many cases, no personally identifiable information is collected by the software offerings. Some of our software offerings can help enable you to collect personally identifiable information. If this software offering uses cookies to collect personally identifiable information, specific information about this offering's use of cookies is set forth below. Depending upon the configurations deployed, this software offering may use session cookies that collect each user's session ID for purposes of session management and authentication. These cookies can be disabled, but disabling them will also eliminate the functionality they enable. If the configurations deployed for this software offering provide you as customer the ability to collect personally identifiable information from end users via cookies and other technologies, you should seek your own legal advice about any laws applicable to such data collection, including any requirements for notice and consent. For more information about the use of various technologies, including cookies, for these purposes, see IBM privacy policy at http://www.ibm.com/privacy and IBM online privacy statement at http://www.ibm.com/privacy/details. The section entitled Cookies, Web Beacons, and Other Technologies, and the IBM Software Products and Software as a Service privacy statement at http://www.ibm.com/software/info/product-privacy. General Data Protection Regulation clients are responsible for ensuring their own compliance with various laws and regulations, including the European Union General Data Protection Regulation. Clients are solely responsible for obtaining advice of competent legal counsel as to the identification and interpretation of any relevant laws and regulations that may affect the client's business and any actions the clients may need to take to comply with such laws and regulations. The products, services, and other capabilities described herein are not suitable for all client situations and may have restricted availability. IBM does not provide legal, accounting, or auditing advice, or represent or warrant that its services or products will ensure that clients are in compliance with any law or regulation. Learn more about the IBM GDPR readiness journey and our GDPR capabilities and offerings here. https://ibm.com/GDPR. Notices 7576 IBM Q Radar. Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide Index. TAQL5 Technical Library V Arial Query Language 5 WC Where Clause 14 Contact Information V Count Function 18 Customer Support V D Description V Documentation V E Events and Flows 67 F Field List 67 Functions Date and Time Format 47 Fields 5 G Group by 15 H having 16 L like clause 18 N Network Administrator V O order by clause 17 S select clause 13 start and stop clauses 44 Index 7778 IBM Q Radar Q Radar Arial Query Language Guide IBM registered